Warning, this podcast contains conversations about real-life subjects and topics. We do not claim to heal, cure, or fix any of your problems. We do claim to serve a God who can. We are not financial advisors, doctors, lawyers, or offering any business or health advice. We do offer prayer, hope, and a conversation that may help you process what you're going through. Side effects may include love, peace, and joy, along with laughter, crying, and occasional bursts of hallelujah and amen. This show is a Story Ministry production, broadcasting live from the Beat Studio.
Hope you can see me now. Yeah. See these shackles on me, I'm gonna break free. I am not the man that I used to be. So many places that I still wanna see. Take a look at my life after recovery. I'm breaking free. I'm breaking free. Life after recovery.
Today we're going to be talking about holiday triggers. I know it's the holiday season, and to tell you the truth, it's hard for a lot of us during this time of year. I think it's supposed to be one of the happiest times of year, but to tell you the truth, I think for a majority of people nowadays, it's probably one of the hardest times of year. Financially, just with the stress, with your kids, with your family. And I think it could just all add up. So today we're going to talk about holiday triggers and what really triggers you during the holidays and how to manage those, because what we want to try to do is figure out how to live life beyond recovery. But if we keep getting triggered, sometimes it's going to be hard to get past those obstacles or things, or we may want to revert back to our old ways or old habits.
Right. And let's define that real quick, is the reason that's a problem, right? It's a problem because what happens when something gets triggered? Something explodes.
Yeah.
Right? And usually on somebody or at somebody, right? So
or inside somebody.
Yeah, so why does it even matter? I mean, why listen to this today? Why watch this? Oh, triggers, who cares? Well, it matters if you're actually legitimately trying to rebuild your life. Understanding your triggers and doing something about them matters, because if you don't deal with those, you're going to constantly hurt other people, hurt yourself, and you're going to have to rebuild relationships. So say you've spent the last 6 months rebuilding relationships, maybe with your baby's mom or your baby's dad, and you're not together, or maybe with your wife, or maybe with your mom or your dad, or with one of your kids or a coworker. You spent 6 months building relationships. Holidays come, you get triggered. You could blow up all of the progress you've made in the last 6 months and the extra trust that you had. So you actually could set yourself back farther than you even were 6 months ago if you don't know what your triggers are and you don't watch those.
That's good. Those are definitely some of the triggers we have to look for and actually recognize. And a lot of those are emotional triggers, but There is also a trigger I recognized myself having the other day. I was in the store, and one of the cashier ladies said to one of the guys, "Oh, everybody's buying those, and they're going quick." And I just felt inside, every emotion in my body, what is it? First of all, then I'm looking around. I'm looking at this guy. Does he have the only one? Do I need to get it for my kids? I felt like I needed to get it for my kids. I didn't even know what the thing was.
Do you know what it was still?
I started to get to that point to where I wanted to ask him, talk to him more, and then I just actually took a deep breath and said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it right now. I'm not doing it this year. Whatever it is.
So what was it that triggered you? I mean, I know what he said, but what was it inside of you that caused you to, somebody says, oh, everybody's getting this. What about you makes you say, I got to go get that?
Well, I didn't want my kids to be left out. I felt like as a parent, if I needed to be a good parent, I have to get the thing that everybody else is getting.
It's that expectation.
The expectation. It's really not even the expectation my kids put on me. It's the expectation I put on myself. It's not like my kids are sitting there begging me for something. It's something that they probably didn't even want. They might not even been the right age for it, but I had felt like I needed to purchase that, buy it, get it. I almost felt like I wanted to fight this guy for some reason. I didn't even know why.
There's a movie, Jingle All the Way, where it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger and I think Sinbad in there, and they battle over this toy.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that. But you said getting that makes you feel better about being a dad, right? So can we sit on that for a minute and talk about it?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that people feel this need to validate who they are relationally with what they can provide somebody?
I think as men, that's how we actually show love. I think a lot of times, or that's how we've been conditioned to show love, is by providing. So it's not just providing for your wife, it's providing for your kids, your family, or girlfriend, or whoever you have in your life. And you want to be that provider. And I think that a lot of times when somebody's saying that they have something, maybe your kids don't have it, or you haven't got it for them, or you haven't even thought about that, it makes you feel like maybe I'm not a good parent. Maybe I'm not doing these things, because some parents sitting there and they're waiting until that thing was released and they bought in. I didn't even know about it till this lady in the store mentioned it. And I don't know. It's tough. I guess conditioned myself.
Yeah, there's I think a lot of comparison. So when we talk about triggers, I think comparison's a huge trigger.
Oh, yeah.
Is that we look and we compare. You know, like I might feel like I've made a lot of progress. I've started working out at a gym. I mean, obviously, you can probably tell that.
Oh, yeah, I was going to mention it.
but I've been working out at a gym, and my progress is based off of my goal. So I have like a certain number I want to hit by the end of the year. And then I told people to check back with me on January 1st. If I haven't done it and they're the first person to ask on January 1st, did you hit your goal? If the answer is no, I have to give them $500.
I got my calendar alarm set. 12:01, you're going to be getting a text from me.
Yeah, so I'm not buying Christmas presents till after January 1 because I need to know if I have any money to give out.
Left.
But the point of saying that is that I have my goal. And so every day I come in, I look on my phone, this is my goal, and I have check boxes. Did I do my goal or not? That's the only thing I'm looking at.
That's good.
Now, if I'm in there looking around at the gym, and I've done like 12 workouts so far. So you can imagine my before and after looks just like my before, right? And nothing's changed. But if I'm to go on into the gym and I start looking at everybody else and I'm trying to compare myself,
oh, geez.
I would have already quit.
That's why I don't go to the gym.
I
got the at-home gym.
Because, well, you're going to compare yourself one of two ways. This is what I found at the gym. I go in the gym and I see either people that are super ripped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? I can't, that's not me. Or I go in and I see people who, they literally look like the Marshmallow Man and they're in there and I'm like, obviously working out doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So either way, I'm quitting.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that same thing happens as far as this whole like comparing ourselves. You can say, well, that dad buys their kid all this stuff and does all these things, and I don't have the money or the ability to do that. So I quit.
Yeah.
Or you could turn around and look and go, well, this kid's dad is abuser and terrible, so I'm going to quit trying to get any better too because I'm better than that person.
Yeah.
I'm so worse than that person, I might as well not try to be better, and I'm so much better than that person, I might as well not try to change. Both of those will just cause us to not make progress at all.
Stay where we are, stay stagnant.
Yeah.
See that a lot of times. And it's kind of hard, especially as a parent. You think you have kids, and a lot of people say, hey, I have kids, now I'm a parent. Like, all of a sudden you know everything. It's like your kids actually teach you how to be parents. But I'll tell you, there's been so many years that I bought my kid that $1,000 present or that new Xbox, or I did the new Xbox. And to tell you the truth, he doesn't even play it now. I mean, it costs a lot of money.
Does that trigger you?
Oh, sometimes, man. Triggers me in the wrong way, though. Not like, hey,
its own trigger.
Yeah. But then also I bought like presents and other stuff, and they sit there and play with the box. But it's more of the time. I'll tell you the truth. I think one of the best Christmas my kids have had is they were watching this like YouTuber. They were like spy ninja people, and they'd always do things, and they'd always run around and find clues and do stuff. And one night my kids went to bed, and all their presents were perfectly under the tree. And then they woke up, and every single one of their presents were missing. And there's just little clues around the house where they were. So all throughout the day, it wasn't just open our presents and tear them open for 5 minutes.
Go find them.
It was all day long. They were finding new clues, revealing new things. And if they couldn't find one, eventually I'd release like a little clue for them, and then they'd go chase that. That was the funnest time, but it had nothing to do with the presents. I don't even remember what I got them that year. So, neither do they.
So what triggered you at this store was the actual item. Maybe that kid's going to get a better item than my kid's going to get.
Yeah.
But what actually fulfilled you the most of any Christmas wasn't even the item. It was that time together.
It was the time.
Right? And that's why, so triggers are important, because if my trigger is keeping me from being able to relate to you, which is what they do, right? They blow up relationally. I get mad. I'm angry.
Yeah.
All these things are going on. So now I can't relate to you. So since I got, like, say you got triggered the morning when you put out all those little clues, right? Something had triggered you and you're mad and you're freaking out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you would have never enjoyed that moment. You wouldn't have that memory. So triggers rob us of the memory, and they rob us of relationship.
Yep.
So comparison is one. We talked about that. One that I think gets a lot of people, in my experience, is just looking back at their past mistakes, so kind of their own insecurities and fears. Right? Like, I don't want to go to that because I know it's not going to go good.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean you know it's not going to go good? Well, because I thought about it and, like, it didn't go good last year. Like, that's their whole thing. So anytime they're going to go to something, instead of looking forward, they turn around and look backwards, and then that triggers a bunch of stuff in them always looking at their past, where, you know, as a pastor, biblically, the Bible says that anyone who puts their hand to the plow, right, then we're talking about plow like old days, like you're plowing a field, you know, so you've hooked up to the oxen and you're pulling and thing, and looks backward, they're not fit for God's kingdom. Meaning that, you know, God's kingdom is what? Well, the Bible says God's kingdom is righteousness, peace, and joy. right, and the Holy Spirit. So if you're always looking backwards, you miss out on righteousness, peace, and joy, right? And we want to have a season, holiday season, that's full of peace and joy and good things. Well, you lose that if you're always looking back. And that's a huge trigger that can stir up a lot of negativity, and you can't change it.
Yeah. I think even those triggers, I think a lot of triggers will prevent you. I mean, keep you looking back, but also prevent you from looking forward just because what the past has held on you and what you have experienced in the past. There's no way that it could change, no way it could be different, no way that things could just, turn out differently than they have in the past because you've experienced this thing and it's happened over and over and over. But sometimes that's when we have to trust God and actually give it to God because to tell you the truth, sometimes when we take it into our own hands, we do end up with the same results over and over and over to where when we decide to give it to God and let that trigger go and let that emotion, because really a trigger is an emotion, right? That's what it creates. It creates an emotion or a feeling inside of us that explodes or makes us do something or actually prevents us from doing anything at all. So a lot of times those triggers we have to be careful with because it's just going to keep, like you said to begin with, keep us stagnant, keep us there, won't let us move, keeps us looking back and saying, this happened, so I can't move forward. This happened in the past, so I can't move forward, from this time or this situation, or I can never experience love again. I can never have this. Right. Or you've experienced some type of abuse, and now it's like everybody's going to abuse you. Everybody's going to hurt you.
Yeah, you make those false assumptions. We don't do that with anything else in life. So if I have a seed, right, and I plant a seed in the dirt, there it goes, and you say, hey, how's your plant doing? And I come and say, it was a seed.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I know, but it turns into a plant. Nope, it was a seed. Last time I went there, it was a seed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a seed. And we look at it and go, well, that's what it was, so that's what it will always be. We don't do that with a seed, right?
No.
We don't do that with a baby, right? A baby comes out, and you're like, well, how's your kid doing? Well, he's a baby. Well, wasn't he born 10 years ago? Yeah, but he was a baby then, he's a baby now.
Yeah.
Right? It seems silly. But then why would we go and say, do you know what? Yeah, things were like that 10 years ago in my life, or this happened 10 years ago, so it's the same now. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And so we have to get out of that, like just labeling everything as the past, because nothing else in life works that way. Everything else, it grows, it changes, it produces into something else. And even biblically, it talks about that. It talks about even if we go through tribulation or struggle, that it produces perseverance, character. Character then produces hope. And that hope doesn't disappoint because it's God's love shed out into our lives. God's love makes an opportunity always for the new future to come. There's always something coming moving forward, but you have to be looking ahead to find it, not caught in the past.
Yeah, I think that's really good, actually. I think one of our things is we focus so much on the material and like the presents that we're going to be giving and the presents that we'll be receiving that we don't really focus on the presence of God and presence even just with our family. A lot of times, and I was talking, working on a book the other day and writing, so I had written this one part that was talking about transferable gifts. So thinking about a transferable gift, a lot of these material gifts aren't transferable. Meaning that once we get them, a lot of times you don't re-gift something. Yeah, you can re-gift it, but a transferable gift is a gift that I receive. Let's say it's a fruit of the Spirit, love, peace, joy, something like that. That's not material or physical, but it's spiritual. That gift, love, like loving your kids, being, spending time with them, controlling even your triggers, using your patience, but having that is a transferable love. The cool thing is it's not just transferable from me to you. So if I experience it, I could actually give it to you too. And if you give it to your kids, they could go give it to their friends or their family or other people. But it's also transferable from this world now into heaven. It's not just a gift that we could give now, but it's something that if I give Andy love or something, we could both take that to heaven.
Well, it multiplies.
It multiplies,
right? Instead of like if I give you a bag of even if I give you a bag of shareable Skittles for Christmas, right? They're shareable, but then they diminish and then they're gone.
They run out.
Or with God's love, going all the way back to Genesis. When He made mankind, He said, "Be fruitful, multiply." Right? God's a multiplication God. Yes. So when we use His gifts and His abilities, anytime we give it out, it multiplies.
Yes.
And then you're not worried about scarcity, like, oh, that's the last present, I won't be able to get that, or oh, that's not as good as the other person's. Why? Because there's always more. There's abundance. It never stops. There's always more love to give. There's always more care to give. There's always more of whatever it is that God has put in your life to give as a gift to someone in the holidays. So those are big things. What's something else that you would say is a trigger though? Like let's talk about specifically going to family gatherings, not your immediate family. Going to family gatherings, because a lot of people in recovery, they go to a family gathering and their own household they've gotten kind of figured out. Like it's under control. we don't allow this in here, we don't allow that in here, we operate this way. Like they've pretty much insulated themselves from their triggers.
Yeah.
But now they got to go to their family reunion for Christmas, or they got to go to this thing at Thanksgiving, and they're looking ahead and they're going, that's in 2 weeks. And the stress is already building.
Yes.
The bad scenarios are already playing out. Like everything's happening. And by the time they actually get there and they get out of their car, it's already done deal. They're screwed. So what about those kinds of triggers?
Well, a lot of times those triggers are more damaging than we think because we get in that mindset that this thing's going to happen, that we almost make it happen in a sense just because we think so much about it, and then our actions start reflecting that even if somebody did or didn't do something, that we're going to react based on that because we've already been triggered because of something that's happened in the past, and there's no way that it could change or it's going to be different. But the thing that's different and that has changed is you, and that maybe that's the difference. Is maybe this year it's going to be different because people are going to recognize what's in you or what the change that you have been making. And a lot of times that's going to reflect on everybody else. It's one of those gifts that just keep giving. But a lot of times we get in that mental mindset is it's going to get bad. They're going to be drinking. They're going to do this. There's a lot of things that go with it. There's the parties and the get-togethers, but then there's also the loneliness of sometimes you're missing out and you're not going to those because of the things that happen there. I mean, sometimes when we want better, we have to separate ourselves from some of those situations or not indulge in some of those things that are available during this time of year, but actually, maybe not go to that party if God's, putting that on our heart, or if it's going to be a bad influence, or maybe if we go to these parties or these places, maybe us trying to be the better influence or just speaking God into it. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe God is the one who's in control, and there's nobody in your life or situation that God hasn't placed for a reason. Now, the hard part is it for you to change or help change them possibly? Because a lot of times we're selfish and we want the help, but maybe God's putting you in their life for you to help them.
You can be a difference maker. So that reminds me of a phrase that actually John Maxwell uses, and that is, you are either a thermostat or a thermometer. And so what that means is you're either gauging the temperature of the room, and just saying, gauging the energy level or the temperature or the mood, or you're changing it, right? Because a thermostat, you go in and you change.
Yes.
I put it down and now it gets cooler. I put it up and it gets hotter.
Yes.
Where if I'm not that, if I'm just a thermometer, all I'm doing is reporting what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hot in here. So when you look ahead at something and you've changed, right? So now you're taking something different. Like maybe that particular environment has a negative mode, but I'm bringing now positivity to that. Or maybe it's got a lot of unforgiveness and bitterness, but I'm bringing what God's put in me now, which is forgiveness and love. I'm bringing this. Wow. This can actually change the environment, right? And we're believing that we're more powerful. If God is for us, who can be against us, right? So we're believing I'm going to walk in here in faith knowing that the change that God's done in me is more powerful than what's there, right? Light is greater than darkness.
Yes.
I can walk into this environment and I can actually bring love, forgiveness, respect, care, peace, even though that's not what's normally in that environment. Or I can just walk in the door and go, well, it's always bad here. And I'm just, checking the temperature, seeing which way the wind blows, doing that type of thing. And then I'm just going to get what I expect. One thing that happened to me, this was years ago, but this is part of my bald story. So I started losing my hair at 20. Well, before that, but I finally admitted it at 20. I lost it early. In fact, I only temporarily had hair. I was born without it. I temporarily had a little spot of hair, and then I started losing it. And that was my life. But what happened was, when I started losing my hair around 20 or so, one day I was actually praying. I think God speaks to us, right? I really believe that. So God was speaking to me one day, and he said, shave your head. Now that's absurd, right? And that's a little bit too specific, to God to say that. But it just would not leave. It kept coming to me. Shave your head, like with a bic, a blade, just bald. And I'm 20-something. I'm not doing that. At the time, he's going to speak it to you next. But at the time, I was super insecure of people. Every time I went into any type of environment, I felt like nobody liked me. Nobody wanted to be around me. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Really bad. High social anxiety, all that. And I kept feeling this. So finally I did it. I shaved my head with a bic, shaved it all off. I went to this event, and I got in there, and I did what I always do. I went and stood against the wall, and I just leaned against the wall, and I just sat in the back. And I started thinking to myself, everyone's going to turn around and see me, and they're going to see that I'm shaved bald, and that I'm standing in the back, and that I'm probably a skinhead or something really terrible, right? And that's what I started thinking. And now my insecurity reversed. I didn't want anyone to think that of me. So what did I have to do? I had to go in the middle of the room and start shaking hands and saying hi to everybody so they would know I wasn't some bad, terrible gangster skinhead guy. So I walk out in the middle of the room.
Something in the back.
And I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm Andy. I'm really not a crazy, guy. And all of a sudden I realized everybody's talking to me and people like me and I like them. And I left that event with friends.
Wow.
I didn't usually leave event with friends. And I realized when I walked out, the only thing that had changed was me. I went into the room, I shook hands, I smiled, I engaged people. So I was actually, in that sense, being a thermostat, not a thermometer. Wow. I brought a different thing and I got a different thing when I left. And so in that case, your trigger that you take, it can present itself because that's how you're going. Or you can say, I'm going to go in faith, believing that God can do something different this time, and then it can all change.
Yeah, a lot of times what triggers us is something that we already know. So if we just actually take a minute to just take a breath and think about it, logically, we already know what's going to happen. Can we not come up with a solution to prevent that? Like most of the time, if things do blow up, when is it when you go to these family parties? It's probably around 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning when everybody has been drinking all night, and it's getting to the point to where somebody should have probably went to bed or quit an hour or two before, but now somebody said something or did something, or we already know how this is going to go because usually it's not the first time. And that's why it's a trigger, because it's a pattern that's happened and we already recognize it and we know deep down inside. And that's what gives us anxiety. It isn't usually based off of something that we're just creating right now that we've never experienced. It's based off of something that we have experienced. So a lot of times, if we just think about it logically, we could come up with a solution. Like you said, even being a plan. Like I could be the thermostat there and I could actually adjust how people are going. If I'm not the one partying and all that, I'm the only one really thinking at this through this, with logic. If I'm thinking about it with logic, I could be logical and say, hey, if they say this to me, I don't have to react that way. I could actually show them love. I could just ignore it if I really want to. I could talk to them about something, like a lot of times one opportunity you have, it kind of hurts for me. I feel like sometimes my dad likes to talk to me mainly when he's drinking. A lot of times he won't want to have just regular conversations. I mean, I could probably call him more and we could have regular conversations, so definitely part my fault. But I notice the time that he calls me the most is usually the drunken calls, like, I love you so much, you're so good, blah, 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 I'm so proud of you. And this, it's like, you know how much more it mean if you told me, like, when you weren't drinking? But if we already know this, couldn't we take the opportunity to almost take advantage of it and be like, hey, we know that they're actually open to talk about stuff. They're open to say stuff. They want to get deep right now. Maybe we should say, all right, hey.
Use it to your advantage.
Exactly. Use it to our advantage. Maybe take a step back from ourselves and be like, you know what? Let's step back from my pride a little bit, how I feel, and let's see if we can maybe help these people.
Yeah, try to work the best with what you have instead of trying to wish it was differently. That's a big deal. I like what you said a couple minutes ago. You said, if you know by this certain time, this is when everything usually goes bad. So you could have left sooner, right? Because that's where it goes. Like our family, for instance, we're a very busy family, like ADHD level, just boom, 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 boom type stuff. We don't take long vacations. And not because we can't afford it, although sometimes that's an issue as well. Yeah. Depends on the season, because we've been entrepreneurs and business people and stuff. Now we're pastors, so that changes. But the biggest thing is we stopped doing it because we always had this picture that, we need to go on like a 5, 6, 7 day vacation, because that's what you do, right? You take a week, and we're going to go somewhere for a week together as a family and get really comfortable and deep together. And it always ended bad, always.
Breaking up, nobody likes each other.
Everything's a disaster. And so I just told my wife a few years ago, I said, you realize if we went for like 3 days, we would have a blast. Yep. And then everybody would come home. And she's like, nobody does a vacation for 3 days. I'm like, we can't do a 5-day vacation well. Let's try it. So we have actually changed it. We start doing our vacations. They're like 3 days.
That's awesome.
And they're amazing. And we come back and everything's great. We're not a different family. We're not any better than we were. If we went on a 5-day vacation right now, we'd be drawing up divorce papers. Kids would be looking to get adopted out to somebody else. Like our whole house would be a mess. We have to come out for counseling. But we can hold it down to 3 days. We're good. So if you have a trigger and man, I'm good until like 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And then when people start drinking, like I just need to get out. Or that's when people start fighting. Yeah. Or that's when this or that happens. Okay, well then just have a plan. Hey, I'm going to go for this part and then I leave. And then you can actually plan ahead and strategize so that you can participate in something in a healthy way without allowing yourself to get dragged
the cool part about what you just said is I've been in those situations quite a bit with my family. So one thing I was saying is when you're saying that, a lot of times if you were actually stepped out, you're going to miss all the drama. But what happens the next day when all the drama happens? everybody's trying to call somebody and tell them about it, which you actually have an opportunity to minister to them because they know that you weren't there, you weren't the one involved. So both sides are probably going to call you and try to tell you what happened and who did what. That actually gives you an opportunity to kind of minister to them and get them to listen to you without them going through the drunk talk because, it's something that happened and they're looking for somebody's action or reaction to where you can actually give them one, not based off of drama and talking gossip, but actually based out of love. Like, yeah, that's kind of why I left yesterday because I had a feeling that was going to happen because it usually does happen. And honestly, that's what hurts my heart the most is when you guys start fighting and you start going into things. And I'll be honest, I almost didn't want to go this year because I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And kind of just let them know. And then it starts planting seeds with them and starts sowing those seeds with them. And then they start thinking, you know what? He has a point. This does happen every year. And guess what? We're 40 or 50 years old right now, and we're still doing the same thing we did when we were 20.
Well, that's a good point is, hey, we're doing the same things when we were 20. I had a conversation today with a guy that's dealing with drug abuse and stuff and has multiple kids, different women, different relationships, unable to really be a dad or care for them and stuff like that. And I was talking to him, and he is supposed to be helping him out on some stuff, and he showed up, and I was talking to him, and he's high. And I said, well, I'm not going to do this with you if you're high. He's like, oh, I'm not. I'm like, okay. Like, no, you are. He's like, only God knows.
Yeah.
I said, well, God and me both know.
Yeah.
So here we go. But this is where he's at, okay? So we had the conversation, and here's the reality. And I told him this. I said, you're this age right now. And I said, 10 years from now, you're going to be this age.
Yep.
And I said, your kids are going to be grown in school. They're not going to want to spend time with you. They're not going to know you. And because you're going to be having done this, and you're going to say, oh, how did this happen? How did I get so old so fast? And like, I don't even know my kids. Because time does not care.
Nope.
Time does not care. It doesn't care what you're doing. It doesn't care if you're, I'm in recovery. I'm trying to get better. And hey, I've been in recovery. I'm not slamming you. I'm just telling you right now, if you're watching this, just look me in the eyes for a second. Time doesn't care. Time will pass you by. Your kids won't know you. Your spouse will leave you. You can keep trying slowly to get better.
Yeah.
But if you don't get serious about getting better, right? It doesn't mean you never will. Praise God that God never gives up on us, but people do.
How much time is stolen?
People give up on you. Your kids give up on you. Your spouse gives up on you. God will always be there for you, but you will still miss opportunities that you can't get back. And so that's why it's important. Like when you're listening to this stuff about triggers or you're listening to stuff about, we talked about root issues last time, these different topics, listen to them and then go to a private spot afterwards and sit and think about, like, what is this about my life that needs to change? How do I actually make a step forward? Because if you don't make a step forward, it's like you live on an escalator. You're not on the sidewalk. If you're standing still, guess what? You're going backwards because everybody else is moving forward. Your kids are getting older. Your relationships are changing. People at your job are getting promoted. All these things are happening. And you're like, well, I know, but I'm kind of in a pause right now. Well, there is no pause. And that's unfortunate, but there isn't. And so if you don't make the decision to grow, then what will happen is life will grow past you. And then you look around and go, well, what happened to me? Yeah. And I don't want that to happen to you. We don't want that to happen to you.
No.
So think about the stuff that we've been talking about and then sit down and say, how can I apply this in my life so that I have a better season this year, not only for myself, but for the people around me that I love and care about that I want to be involved with.
That's good. There's what's that verse? The enemy comes in the night, or thief comes in the night to, what is it?
Yeah, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Steal, kill, and destroy. Now, they call him a thief, but they don't call him a thief because he's always stealing material things from you. Think about the love, the peace, the joy, everything that has been stolen from you. Sometimes just because we're stagnant, we just sit there and we don't know. Sometimes we don't know what to do. So can't blame you for not knowing what to do, but also you can't just sit there.
No, as you learn stuff, apply it. That's the key. You learn something today. Hopefully, we gave you something that's worth applying. Take that and apply it. In fact, if you're going to sit down to listen to a podcast, whether it's ours or somebody else's, or watch a YouTube or anything like that, sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil. Sit down with a piece of paper and a pen. And as you're listening, go, oh, wait a second. This is something that impacts me that I could do differently. And then grow and begin to change. And you'll find it doesn't take very much. A little bit of change here, a little bit of change here, a little bit of change here. And all of a sudden you have totally different results, different relationships, more joy, less triggers. All this stuff starts to change. But it doesn't change by hearing. It changes by doing. And in fact, the Bible tells us that. It says to not be hearers of the word only, but to be doers. It's when you start to do is when you start to have change, and then the good things in life start to happen.
I think that's big. I think we mentioned it like last podcast is world and society tells you, be better to, what is it, do better, or something like you have to be better to do better.
Right.
But the reality is you have to start doing better to be better, to get better.
You just take action. You don't have to feel it. You just do it. Like, I
Yep.
don't feel, going back to the beginning of this as we end here, I don't feel in better shape,
Yeah.
right, to start working out. I just started working out. Now, if I keep doing that and showing up, guess what will happen? 6 months from now, I'll be in better shape.
Yeah.
But it's not because I first felt in better shape and then I went and worked out. It doesn't work like that ever. It's actually you do the action
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to have the results and then you start to feel different and then it all progresses from there. And so wherever you're at, I mean, you could feel horrible about your life right now. You could feel horrible about yourself. It's really irrelevant. Just take the next right action and you'll start to feel differently. And slowly but surely you'll begin to change. That's what happened to me. And that's what's happened to Jacob's
all
life.
of
And we're
us,
speaking
yeah.
from experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think John Maxwell said one time, fail forward. That's the exact same thing. I mean, failure is part of success. So sometimes we feel like we're failing because we're not maybe moving as quick as we want. But with God and just progress, I mean, we are moving forward and taking steps. That's how we do it. That's how we get better every day. So we're going to wrap it up. Definitely appreciate you guys. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, everywhere else. Also, thebeat.com.
Thebeatchurch.com.
Thebeatchurch.com. Check us out. There's also some good recovery groups. L3, if you guys are local, come check that out. And we thank you guys for joining us today.